All right, good evening. I'm calling to order the city council meeting for City of Hayden, Idaho. It is Tuesday, August 13th. The time is approximately 5:03. May we get a roll call of council members, please?
Council President Roeder?
Yes.
Councilmember DePriest?
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Here.
And Councilmember White is absent. We do have a quorum.
Okay, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Abby, will you please lead us?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, any additions or corrections to the agenda tonight? I think I was expecting someone to present for ID Sunshine, and I don't see a face in the crowd that corresponds with that. Did I miss anyone? So I guess we're going to omit item 1A. Any other additions or corrections to the calendar? Okay, I'm hearing none. We'll roll right into the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are action items that include approval of July 9th, 2024 special city council meeting minutes, approval of July 15th. We had two? I thought we only had one special city council.
That was the one with the Hayden Area Regional, or Hayden,
And the first one then?
one of them was with the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
I'd have to look at which one was which.
Item B is approval of July 15th, 2024 special city council meeting minutes. Approval of July 23rd, 2024 city council meeting minutes. Approval of 2024 Hayden Lake Marathon event permit application, support agreement, and loudspeaker use request. Approval of change order 1 for the Hayden Meadows sidewalk project, which I believe was a reduction in cost.
I read it.
Okay. Approval of change order 02C for Ramsey Road Gravity Sewer Phase 2, Wyoming to Dakota. Approval of the change order number 05C for Ramsey Road Gravity Sewer Phase 1B, Wyoming to Buckles. Approval of JUB agreement, sewer basin analysis, ratification of the July 2024 payroll, ratification of bills paid 7/30/2024, and approval of bills for payment. Is there any discussion on the consent calendar, or would a council person like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion that we approve the consent calendar A through K as stated.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Hearing none, may we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yep.
Council President Roeder?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to visitor public comments. I do not have any public comment forms. Does anyone in the crowd wish to offer comment tonight? Okay, hearing none, we're going to roll into new business. Our first agenda item is an appeal from Kristen Pearson, whose dog was declared vicious by Officer Osborne. The dog is alleged to continue a pattern of being loose after the owner was warned several times and cited once previously. Our city council's job is to consider any evidence provided by Ms. Pearson and weigh such evidence against our laws and other testimony introduced. So for this, our appellant will present. Is our appellant here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you come up to the podium, please, and present?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is this considered the podium?
Yes. And do we need to state name for the record?
Yes, please.
Would you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Kristen Pearson. I have two puppies. They turned a year in May 17th, 2023. They are from my sister's home back in California. They are half Elkhound and half Husky. I did bring around my puppy because I think a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I did not bring one of them in without permission. But I would like to show you the alleged offender. It is true that my puppies, they are Huskies, and having two of them, they have gotten out. Absolutely, they have been at large. And I have been seen chasing them, getting them in the vehicle, and I have never been an owner of husky animals, much less two of them where they go and play, everything's a game to them. But everything started, they started getting out on a regular basis in February. Once the snow had been melted. And at that point in time, due to having 5 children, I have the eldest is now 12, the youngest is turning 2 in September, on September 21st. The door, if it opened, they were out, and we would go and do the chasing around of the dogs. For the amount of times that they have been out, I have received, I believe, 2 citations for animals at large. But we have tried to go and keep those animals in, because we also have a large bloodhound that knows how to open up the front door. So we've had to switch the front door from the typical swinging handle to an actual knob in order to go and prevent our puppies from continuing to get out. We had at the, we have now an automatic door lock that will go and beep if the door is not completely shut. And one of the things, and I know that this is not getting to yet the vicious animal, and I will get there, I promise. I'm a little nervous, but one of the things that I noticed is in all houses, it seems like, especially winter and summer, the door jambs can expand or they can contract. And so a door can look like it is closed, especially during the winter times, and it not be 100% closed. And living in a safe area, and I grew up in a safe area as well, I didn't grow up with the necessity of locking a door every night because there was always a adult or my parents around, and we've raised our children very much that way. So now we do have an automatic door lock, but the puppies on the day in question, they got out, and for the first time, I could not find them. I had taken off looking for them and talking to, since they are well known around the neighborhood, unfortunately. I had taken off, and anybody who I see on the outside, I would talk to, and one lady who was walking her dog, I ended up going and speaking with her, and she said, yes, I saw them, and they were trying to get to a bunny, but I was able to scare them off, and they went that away. And I gave the lady my number, my address. I'm very sensitive to bunnies, chickens, any type of rodent or other animal that's not necessarily the typical domestic animals. And because I know that that means different things to everybody. We are, in fact, in our family, we have a bunny that is my daughter's pride and joy. Not my puppies so much, but the bunny is. Well, we've never experienced our dogs going in, trying to do anything other than, if the bunny is out, we try not to, we will not put a bunny with a dog. A dog is going to chase anything that hops or flies. We have not had it where our bunny has been chased to death or scared to death by the dogs. We have our neighbor that has a chicken coop, and those chickens go and balk all day long. The dogs do not dig a hole there. However, on the day in question, I let them out in our backyard, and the dogs had dug yet another hole that I now have filled with chicken wire, and am still trying to get up some more money to continue to do a more permanent solution. Well, they got out. I found out that the dogs had tried to get to a bunny while they were roaming, and then they ended up getting to right off of Honeysuckle and Chateau Circle or Drive. There are these, it's where it becomes almost like a farmland or big houses with farm. Well, the person there chain link gate, from when I looked, it doesn't close all the way, so it wasn't like the dogs dug under it, but this individual ended up having free reign chickens. But they weren't in an additional facility like a coop, at least from the report I read. And so my puppies, one of them is bad, but if you have two of them, they will go and chase. And from my understanding, it is that they ended up going and killing 7 chickens. And I looked at the definition, and I understand a vicious dog is considered under 4-3-6 of the Hayden City Council, of the Hayden City Ordinance, that, I apologize, I quoted the wrong one. That ordinance that I had just mentioned talked about chickens being housed in a coop. And I only bring this up because I think it is if you're looking at the factual considerations of whether or not to go and label an animal as a vicious animal, you have to go and look at the behavior. If they were excited in some way or adequate provocation. I think it is vague on what provocation is. Provocation, we generally will think about like, don't you dare, like something violent. But provocation for a dog, any dog that I know, can be simply a bird run, flies, they chase it. And these chickens flying, or lack of flying, but, running around, the dogs chased it. I was not given any information that the dogs tore these chickens to smithereens or anything like that. And so I think that had these chickens been in a coop, yes, my dogs are a menace by being at large, but I don't think that they would have killed anybody. It's chickens or animals. I then went and looked at what the definition is of a vicious dog, and it's any animal that attacks, bites, or physically injures domestic animals, person, or livestock. I then looked at the definition of what domestic animal was, and it said the typical cat, dog, what we consider snakes, lizards, things, and then some types of birds. But chicken wasn't included, but then it had this exception that goes and says any bird that is raised. And so, yes, my dog did kill or is alleged to have killed a chicken, because a chicken, I presume, is being raised on that person's property. But in the definition, it goes for vicious, dangerous animal. It has kind of what I would say exceptions. It goes and says not only that it has to be any animal that attacks or bites or physically injures a domestic animal, person, or livestock, it has to be without adequate provocation. I went over a little bit of what provocation means. I don't think it necessarily has to go and mean that it has to be threatening. Now, if an animal is biting a human being, without being a human, not being threatening, that's a completely different story. But here we are talking about what a natural instinct of any animal. Cats kill birds. And cats are not under this label for vicious animal, yet they have killed many a chicken. And so it also says that it's just a prima facie standard to presuming whether or not this animal is considered vicious. Prima facie means if you meet all of the requirements, we are going to presume it. It doesn't mean that my animal is, in fact, guilty and has to be labeled as a vicious animal. Because in 4-3-17, we go and then look at the viciousness guidelines and standards. And then it's number 1, very top one, is whether or not the animal bites a person. Then we go and look at the extraneous circumstances surrounding the occasion, indicating temperament. We have chickens. We have chickens that were not where the animal dug a hole underneath to get to these chickens. I know they don't do that because we have chickens in our next door neighbor's yard. I did not go onto the property, so I guess that would be an assumption if I have to be, being honest. But that would indicate their temperament. Then we have to look at the general menace to neighborhood and public people. As I've stated, my animals, I'm new to not being a dog owner, but to 2 puppies. I've never had them at one time, especially 2 huskies that have a different type of personality than, let's say, a golden retriever, a bloodhound, or a chihuahua. Those I know how to handle. Huskies, they want to play with anything, everybody, and just roam around and play. I think that the evidence, even by knowing that they have been at large several times, and this is starting way back in February, and never once did we have, up until this situation on, I believe it was June 30th, where my dogs were getting out, honestly, at least 2 times, 3 times a week because of the kids, and then we'd go and do something, and then we'd dig a hole, and then we'd cover a hole, and they would go out and just keep getting out. They have not been menacing people. I know that because I've talked to some people, and they go and say, yeah, animal control has come and talk because the animals have gotten out, and they are concerned on whether or not that the animals have been aggressive. I do see that there is somewhere in the report that a lady had a fear of one of the dogs, and so she stayed in her vehicle, but considering the amount of times, it did not say that the dog attacked her or did anything. I can't tell you what was going on with that woman because she's not here, and her name wasn't even listed in the report to even go and have a adequate conversation on what was going on. Some people are just more sensitive than others. And it's not, again, where they attacked her. She tried to shoo them off her property and then went into her car and they left. So we can establish that they are menacing to the neighborhood as far as getting out and playing and being loose, but not in a violent or having a bad temperament. Then we look at the potential for an animal to attack or menace again. I think that the proof is in the fact that they have been out several times. They've had only one incident, and I disclosed about the bunny who was chased off. And then even the owner of the chickens, he was able to chase them off. That it shows that, again, it's more likely a playing situation and an ownership thing, a civil thing where I need to atone for my animal. And I have, at the very beginning, asked to go and be able to make restitution to the animal for the chickens because that's the right thing to do. And if there was any damage done, make that right. But when you look at the vicious dog standard and what is actually required of an animal, that is not talking about restitution. It's talking about putting a rider on my homeowner's policy for a vicious animal. I have 5 kids, and unfortunately, that is something I cannot afford. I can't afford that. And then to add to it, you have to have a kennel. These animals will be stuck with a muzzle every time that they go out. They will be in a kennel, not just a dog line, but a cement kennel on the ground. And if I don't do the cement on the ground, I have to dig a foot in, get a chain link fence, have a top on it, and then I have to wait over 2 years to go and appeal the decision. For animals that got out and did what they do, chase birds. That is effectively making the 3-dog family into a 1-dog family because it's something I can't afford, and I will have to either go to Spokane and allow these animals to be adopted, but even having them with that label, since that label continues with them, they won't be adopted because of the liability of what that statement says on vicious animal. You are typecasting an animal for, you know, for the potential that the animal is going to bite a human. Then we have to look at the record of compliance with animal regulations by animal owner. As I've stated, I've been trying to be compliant, but I have fallen short. But when I have received a misdemeanor, and I will be going to court with up to 6 months of jail time for my animal killing chickens. Since that time, my dogs, since I can't afford to do a kennel, my dogs go on a run. They are not released off of a run. They stay on the back porch and have the ability to go into the grass. They are, when they are in the house because of the kids and knowing that they can go and be let out, you know, by any visitor, because they're smart, you know, they'll go and know who they can go and get between the legs of. We have them on a leash, and even in the house, so that they do not accidentally go out the door. Honestly, since June 30th, my dogs got out once with a visitor, and the visitor ended up chasing them down, and within less than 5 minutes, we got them back into the house. And then we thought, my husband and I thought early a few days ago that, okay, let's go and see if they're trained enough not to go out the front door, because we are looking at doing an electric fence. But again, that's taking time and money, and we are busy we have a lot on our plate, that we let them off of the leash in the home, and I thought the door was closed and the battery had gone dead to the beeping, so they nudged the door open. I immediately went out, because we also have bells on the door, and I retrieved them shortly thereafter, and they were within my line of sight, but they did want to go again to the farm area, and I was able to go and tempt them with some food, and they got right back into the car. So it is definitely a work in progress. I can't guarantee to you that they will never get out. I think anybody who did would be a bold-faced liar. Everybody's had their dog out, but I can say that my sister has had her dog kill a chicken, her own chicken. I can say that my daughter's friend had their dog that have killed chickens. My dog has killed chickens, and I'm sure if any of you fine folks go and have any neighbors being in a rural area, semi-residential, that is the case as well. Now, lastly, I do have my dog. I would, if the council would permit me, she is on a leash. I would like to show you exactly what dog we are talking about. It's a dog that comes up to my knee high. She is honestly the friendliest one, and she is safe around kids and children, everything like that. But this vicious animal, your decision today will make it effectively so that we cannot even take them to the dog park or do any of those things, as well as more difficult to even do training at Petco or anything like that, because they're still puppies. They just turned a year old. But then I go and look at Idaho law, which is above the Hayden City law, and under Title 25, Chapter 28, that's where it talks specifically about liability for a dog killing poultry. It goes and gives a claim of action for landowners or any owner who suffers damage. I find that significant because here we have an actual law, state law, that this obviously has to be common enough that they put in the title, liability for a dog killing poultry. And then that is on 25-2806, under that particular chapter I referenced. Then, if you go to 25-2812, we look at where it specifically talks about the dangerousness of a dog or at-risk dangerous dog. And all through that statute, it mentions only a dog's propensity to be violent against a human being, attack a human being, or bite a human being. And then at the very end, after it goes and says it could go before a judge or, you know, since Hayden has its own statute, but if I were charged with Idaho law, I could go before a judge and the judge would be able to go and come up with adequate restrictions. But it said at the very end of that section that ordinances are allowed to make a more restrictive ordinance. When you look at restrictive, it's what can or cannot the dog do under the guidelines of that initial statute that is talking about the ability to go and attack a human being. So you go and look at, you know, Hayden Code is saying, well, we're going to presume initially that the dog will have a propensity to attack a human being, because if they are willing to kill an animal, they are willing to potentially be aggressive with a human. I understand that, but if that were the only standard for this label, then it would not have, under our code in this fine city, saying it wants the circumstances. It wants to know, because you guys are here to go and take a look at whether or not the propensity of my dog, unfortunately, killing chickens, is whether that propensity you believe is elevated enough to be where if there was a person and they got out, they would be a danger to the community. I think that with my history of having the dogs get out, that you have to find that it's a negative. They are not, their goal is not to attack anybody. Their goal is to go and play, and they found some chickens to play with, and it has to be on me to go and make sure that I continue to learn about these animals' behavior and learn how to properly and adequately keep these animals contained, unless they are on a leash, outside of the home. But they don't need to have a muzzle. They don't need to go and have the additional restrictions. And we most definitely do not need a rider on our insurance policy to go and do that. And I have been honest with you fine folks and said that, yes, they did get out 2 times from the date of from July 1st to today's present. That, in my book, is significantly an improvement on how proactive we are trying to be with these animals to prevent them from getting out and being a menace to society. And if you guys would like, I did bring my dog so you could see what animal it is or what it looks like, but I need your permission.
Okay, is that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Council, do you have any questions for our, sorry,
I have a question, Mayor.
yeah, I want to say appellate, but that's not the right word.
Appellant.
Appellant, thank you. I know it's Ms. Brown. Go ahead, Matt.
How much would it cost you to pay for a rider?
That I have not looked into because I don't have any additional funds. I don't have it. I barely can afford to keep the basic necessities on. But I know from other people talking, it's usually about $500 or more. But my husband is a disabled service connected veteran, and right now I am not working but maybe one day a month, and I'm just not able to afford it, sir.
And have you tried shock collars on your dogs?
Yes, I have tried shock collars and they are very effective. But shock collars, they only go X distance away. And so if they get out of the house, and usually they get out, it's either like early morning or usually later at night if somebody goes and runs to the car to get something they forgot in the car. That's when they get out, and usually during those times, we have not had the shock collar, and quite honestly, usually in my house, we either have the shock collar but not the remote, or we have the remote but not the shock collar. I have 5 kids, and that is why we have to maybe look at an electric fence.
Tom, ready, any questions?
If you don't mind, couple.
No, go ahead.
It kind of sounds like you're a bit overwhelmed by this situation. Is that a true statement?
I am overwhelmed at possibly having to lose my animals.
Okay, so you do love the dogs, you want to keep them. Let me hypothetically ask, what if tonight the council were to vote in favor of your appeal and then the dogs got out and destroyed more domestic animals? What would you do?
I'd have to go and find them a new home. But right now, with the label that they could potentially have, that is going to be nearly impossible. And right now, I have done very well at keeping them in the home.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah. Go ahead.
You say both dogs came from your sister?
Yes,
And you mentioned California, is your sister in California?
yes, both my parents passed away in 2020, and my sister had a dog that was part of my parents, and they bred, one was an elk hound and one was a husky. And so this is the offspring of the puppies, so it's my one connection to my mom and dad.
I mean, it's obvious here, I think we all have animals and things like that, very attached to them. But I along with Council Member Shaver here, feel that not only, that there is an overwhelming factor here. And 5 kids and the home situation, that I guess when we get into it, maybe a little bit more of the deliberation, dealing with the vicious aspect of it, maybe separate that out, I don't know. And I understand the concern about that label following the dog and then making it very difficult. But is there any likelihood or possibility that your sister could care for the animals until they maybe get older and better trained? Is that a possibility?
I don't have the money to get down to California to go and see her, and at her home in California, in Simi Valley, they already have 5 dogs. And so I can't go and re-gift them, and besides that, my children are going to be devastated because I already listed that it'd be a possibility.
I mean, again, this is an emotional, very emotional situation that I think everybody here probably understands. And along with Councilmember Schaefer, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, there's a likelihood, as hard as you try or whatever you do, that these dogs are going to get out again. I grew up, I had Dobermans and active, and even have a dog now that's squirrely. And you have to be very careful when your door opens and things like that. And if it continues to get out, and has the same issues and stuff like that, I just think that a way needs to be found now to prevent
And-
being in front of us again or the like.
And that is why we've done, for the backyard, we've gotten the chicken wire and we've put those under the fence to prevent the digging of the holes. That's why we ended up going and getting the run line for them to be on. They go immediately on the run line in the backyard to prevent any, if they were to go and do that. And we have basically put in the house where, since animals should be around the owner's feet anyway, that's why we've kept them on a leash. It was the only time when we decided that let's try it out, and sure enough, they went out and I got them within immediately, but I don't believe any reports were ever filed or brought up because they literally, I was out booking it and they came, and I think it's so hard to go and put these dogs, they're not squirrely, they are, they play.
Well, yeah,
Play a lot. They, they're like little miniature huskies, and they just,
are they going to
play.
grow into full-size huskies?
No, they won't. They are going to stay at they're at the knee length.
Year-old about now?
Yes.
I'd like to, if possible, hear from the deputy. Is it Osborne?
That's the next step,
Okay,
is
okay,
when
okay.
she's done with her testimony.
Okay.
So Kristen, do you have any other testimony at this point? You'll have a chance potentially to talk again.
Yeah, no, I think I'm good. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. All right, so for the public, our next step in this is staff, or in this case, we've got our animal control representing the staff. Will now offer comments, and council, you'll have a chance to ask questions.
Good evening. I'm Officer Ricky Melrose. I'm actually going to stand in for Deputy Officer Osborne because she's recovering from a medical surgery. She's on medical leave right now, so she couldn't attend. So I'm not aware of the actual case that conducted this. I did read the report, but I've had multiple contacts prior with her dogs. Personal experience in that sense. We're going to stand by behind what the report is, or I could sit here and read the report to you, but it's the same thing. But I'm open for any questions you have about what itself.
Okay, questions for the officer? Go ahead, Ed.
You have had contact with the animals?
Yes, 5 prior ones were.
Recently, kind of over
To
what
be
time
honest,
period?
I do not remember exactly, but it was before the July, be in June, and prior to that, maybe, I know for a fact, at least 3 in June, where I've contacted. I've caught the dog once. They're kind of skittish. They don't come to you, but I caught one. I got him trapped in the corner. Once you catch one, you can get the other one.
Yeah.
The other 2 times, I was able to carouse them back to their residence because I know where they reside. Basically, I chased them with the patrol car until they headed there. And once they get to the house, they'll go straight to the house because they're tired of me chasing them. I know for a fact, I've talked to the appellant at least 3 times where I've told her, hey, we understand her situation. We want you to make sure the dog stays in the residence. Stays in there, and she explained to me pretty much what she stated. The dogs dig under, the dog's got a loose board. In fact, I helped her move a large rock to block one of the boards from coming out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So-
This is probably, this is a tough question and possibly difficult to answer though. In your opinion, related to the vicious animal label, can you comment on that?
It's difficult because I wasn't there. I didn't observe.
In your experience with them though, would you?
Sadly, in my experience, I've only been an animal control officer for 2 years. Prior to this, I was a CSO, but in my other life, before I came here, I was a police officer for 22 years. I was canine handler for 12 years, so I do know some of the dogs' acts and whatever. In the 2 years as a animal control officer up here, huskies, husky mixes, malamutes, are most of the causes of our chickens and fowl deaths and attacks. Like she says, they have a tendency to want to play, but their version of play has to do, it becomes their instinct.
Yeah.
They will take a chicken out or ducks,
Towards
geese.
humans.
To be honest, I've never saw any indication for her dogs that be towards humans. They're more skittish, they will run, but they will take out fowl, as I've seen. But like I said, I've never seen her animal personally do it. It's just my experience with other huskies, husky mixes, Malamute mixes, those things. As my 2 years here. Sadly, my 12 years, the canine handler doesn't tell me that because my dog's highly trained and will not leave my side. So that I can't say.
Tom, anything to add?
No, but in deliberations, we'll discuss options, right? Yeah. Okay.
And Matt, any questions for the officer?
Well, it kind of goes along with, Ed asked the question, but I just want to maybe ask it in a different way. I know there's an ordinance definition of vicious, and there's probably somebody that can observe a dog and tell if it's vicious or not. There's probably, those are probably different, but in your opinion, and have you ever seen the dog her dog's ever in a vicious behavior?
It depends on their prey drive. It's because it's a viciousness against another animal. I wasn't there. I've never observed it. I'll be, going to be honest and say, no, I've never seen her dog be vicious to another animal. It wants to play with another dog usually is what they do. They go to other dogs. Doesn't like humans. It will run from a human. But I've never seen it interact with fowls or domestic, geese, goose, whatever. But, so I can't say anything about her dog personally. And I wasn't there when this occurred. I just can go by what the report says, and the owner of the chicken said the dogs were attacking it.
So based on the report, does it define the dogs as being vicious at all?
I don't know what the wording is and how they want to say what it is in the end.
I mean, that seems to be the key issue here, is are they vicious or not? And I'd like to know.
And I don't know if you put the dogs with other chickens, it's not going to kill it or will kill it. You never know until it happens. I can't label them that way because I wasn't there. I wish Osborne was here, or else the victim that owned the chicken was here and he can explain it because he actually saw the attack. So I just got to go by what the report says. So
Did that victim provide any testimony?
I think you got a copy of the report.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
And he states in there what he observed. And like I said, I can't say what he said because I wasn't the officer that took the report. I'm just here to answer questions what I can. And there's some questions I can't. I just got to stand behind what the report says. I would love to be able to answer it, but.
Is that photocopied picture? No,
No,
never
that's
mind.
the letter.
Is it in the,
It looks
There
like
should be a copy of the report in
yeah,
there.
It looks
description
like
of
a site-
immediate incident that?
It's called a
There's a-
vicious dog report. It
Yeah.
looks like this.
So there's like a
That's the one.
2 or
Oh, yeah,
3
yeah,
sentences.
I saw that, yeah. Scared
But
me.
if you read I think you got a copy of the report itself. It should have what he stated to Officer Osborne. No? Okay.
I think we were provided with
Yeah,
that.
it's pretty
I thought I read some.
brief.
Yeah.
If you'd like, I can read it from what it says from the report.
Can I take a look at that before you read it?
I think it's this one, right there.
Yeah, the report number's the same. Go ahead and read that into the record.
Sorry, I didn't know I was going to read, so it might be a little slow because I didn't bring my glasses.
You need to borrow
Says-
some?
We've got cheaters.
They're cheaters, I'll borrow them.
Okay,
I have no
Yeah.
shame. Thank you.
We have them kind of everywhere.
Oh, look at that, I can actually read. It says, basically, Green stated he found one of the chickens dead behind the shop in the chicken yard. He found another hiding in the raspberry bushes. The second bird was missing most of its tail feathers, and there was a third hen which had some minor lacerations to its body. Green stated he didn't want to pursue charges against the dog owner at this time, but wanted the dogs to be declared dangerous or vicious if the owners were permitted to keep them. He said that he was concerned for the safety of his children should the dogs be found chasing his chickens again, and one of his children tried to stop the dogs from injuring the birds. Green showed me some photos of his cellular phone, which he had taken of the dogs and had injured his birds. I requested the following paragraphs, the emails. Basically, he said he was finished with that, and that's it. on that part of the chicken. I think there was another part where it was other chickens, but, I can't remember what is back here. Okay, here we go. I confirmed with Baldwin, the dogs he witnessed in his backyard were the same. It was another person, Baldwin. The dogs were photographed that Green had shown me on a cellular cell phone. When he arrived at Green's yard, Baldwin stated he put all the dead birds in the trash. He hadn't cleaned up all the feathers, etc., that were still in the yard. Baldwin showed me around the yard and barn. I observed 5 dead chickens in the garbage can and a pile of feathers and wing parts in multiple areas of the yard. Baldwin stated that the other 2 chickens were also in the garbage bin just underneath and you could not be seen in the pile. I took photographs of the dead birds in the yard inside the barn. So basically it was 7 chickens. Sir, most kind of you.
Another follow-up question, if I may.
Hopefully I can answer.
So based on the information that you have from the appellate and from your department, is there anything that says these dogs are vicious towards people?
As far as I know, I don't think so.
So really the issue is, we can say they're vicious towards chickens.
Chickens or fowls, well, for chickens for sure.
Okay. And I think I just want to make that distinction
Okay.
because, I mean, it's a whole different thing because we're tasked with safety, health, and welfare of our citizens. And if we have dogs out there that are vicious towards people, that's a no-brainer in my brain,
Yeah.
in my mind. But now we're talking about animals. And so anyway, I'm trying to process this in my mind, but thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Any other questions? I have one question.
Yes, sir.
If you're not able to answer, that's fine. In your experience, are you able to offer any statistical data as far as animals that are harmful towards other animals? What are the odds that they would be harmful towards a human intervening in their excited state? Like if they're in the middle of killing chickens and
That
somebody
is
intervenes?
very difficult because it depends on the drive of the dog. My working dog, if you got between him and his person, he might reattach to you because now you're taking away his prey. Her dogs, I can't say one way or the other because I've never dealt with them. I don't train with them. I've only dealt with them where I'm basically having an old man run around chasing really young puppies.
Okay, fair enough.
So I can't say one or the other.
Thank you, Officer Melrose. Oh, do you have?
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Based on your experience, will these dogs grow out of it? And having attacked domesticated animals?
I'll be
already?
honest, as from my experience, once they attack chickens, they're most likely still gonna attack chickens. They have that drive already built in it. From my experience, Huskies, Malamutes, any of those breeds already have that drive to go after fowl. It's like if you got a bird dog, it's always gonna go after a bird. It's that instinctive drive. I personally don't think they would injure a human, but if you happen to have a chicken and you stand in between it and it gets into that mode, it might. But like I said, I've never dealt with their dog while they were attacking something, so I can't give any experience or knowledge on that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right,
Thank you, officer. All right, Kristen, at this time, we can call you back up if you want to comment on anything the officer talked about. So in other words, you can't bring up anything new, but you can respond to any evidence that was presented by the officer. Okay.
I think the officer had responded, or there was a question posed to the officer that if somebody got involved in between, you know, the dog's going after a chicken, would that human be potentially injured? And I know that I have had my daughter with one of the puppies to go to the dog park, and there were no issues, but when they first go in, the dogs enter into the dog park, the one dog was still on the leash and was scared, and my daughter was immediately able just to grab my dog by the collar, and she is 12 years old, and pull my puppy away from the other dog that was not quite happy with my puppy going up to say hi. And within 2 minutes later, the 2 dogs were busy playing. So there is an experience I do have where even my young child has been able to go and get involved where There was another animal not exactly happy with my puppy's curiosity of trying to go and sniff the other dog's butt for the moment.
Thank you.
Fact.
Oh, I'm sorry, any questions regarding what I said? I apologize.
Any new questions? Okay. All right, so at this point, council, this is where we move to deliberations, and then, but after deliberations, a decision. I assume you don't want to deliberate, to schedule deliberations at a later date, correct? In other words, we're going to deliberate now.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so go ahead, somebody, please, I'll step back and you guys deliberate.
Okay, I'll go first. I hate to put the label of vicious on these dogs, mostly for the legal ramifications that I think she accurately described. But on the other hand, I do believe they're a nuisance to the neighbors and you know, losing domesticated chickens. I have lots of friends that have chickens that they raise for the eggs, and that's unfortunate. And your dog is obviously a repeat offender. I should speak to you. The dog is a repeat offender. I'm just wondering, is there some in-between solution that we can pursue that would be like, okay, here's like your last chance, and then we would do the label.
So there is a dangerous dog level. We could ask Fonda if council has the flexibility to declare a dog dangerous versus vicious and then discuss the differences, if that's what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
Or you can grant the appeal, at which point, if it happens again, it's automatically declared vicious and they're automatically required to comply with all of the statutory and ordinance regulations.
So that's another option. So there's two options there.
So the dangerous or nuisance animal designation under your code 4-3-19 says that any animal other than a domestic cat, which has been at large in excess of 2 times within any 12-month period, so I think you have evidence of all of that, or which has been at large and has proven menacing or threatening when at large, may be declared a nuisance or dangerous as appropriate by the animal control officer. So
And then what are the consequences if a dog is labeled dangerous?
upon making
Dangerous?
I believe it's.
Okay.
dangerous or nuisance.
These are, okay.
So upon making the declaration, the animal control officer may prescribe the actions which the animal owner must take to abate the nuisance or to protect the public from the menacing characteristics of an animal so designated. Such restrictions may include additional fencing, security measures, repair of containment facilities, additional supervision, or other measures intended to address the nuisance or danger involved.
So it sounds like everything else, but without the illegal labels. Is that right?
And the requirement for insurance and stuff like that.
Yeah, it doesn't have the insurance requirement.
Okay. Anything else to add, Tom?
No.
Ed or Matt?
Yeah, I'll go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I agree, and that's kind of where I was looking to go too. If you want to call it a last chance, one more time type of thing without the heavy financial burden and the label on the animal. It sounds like the appellant is attempting through fencing and various methods that she has described to contain the animal. And I think that's the direction I'd like to attempt to go, is to, give another opportunity. And I believe she probably understands that if it happens again, as council just described, it's automatic.
Well, I'll go on. So I have 2 comments to that. One, this section of your code doesn't say you have the ability to amend the citation to a different declaration, which is what you're trying to do. Number 2, I will say, your follow-up section says that if the dog's declared vicious, dangerous, or a nuisance, so any one of the 3, and there's a follow-up incident, then the dog is to be impounded. So even your lesser designation, could we find a route for you to do that, doesn't change the next step.
And did I understand, because I was kind of the animal control officer, is that what you're just alluding to?
Yes.
That they would have to amend the citation?
Yes.
That we can't just say, okay, we're gonna make that amendment now, it would have to be initiated
Yeah,
by.
you're either just approving or denying the appeal of the citation that's been issued.
Okay, if we approve the appeal, is there any, even though I think we would all like,
Then there's no declaration of viciousness, dangerousness, or nuisance on the
but there,
dog.
it's not mandatory that, animal control amended. They could or they could not,
They're not going to amend this citation.
they'd have to issue
This
another one.
citation was issued, you're making a decision on this citation.
Okay.
So there is no way for us tonight to pursue like a middle?
A modification of the
It's
existing
either yay or nay.
citation, no.
Matt?
Well, I asked the question if anywhere in the record have the dogs been identified by the officers, any officer, that the dogs are vicious.
So did you read your code definition of vicious? That's in your packet?
Yeah?
Okay. So walk,
But my point is that if that's true, that they're not deemed vicious, the only place I see of vicious is it's the vicious dog report. It says vicious dog report. So if they're not vicious, then they're either a nuisance or what was the other?
dangerous.
Dangerous. But if we grant the appeal based on that we approve the appeal because they weren't vicious, it just doesn't have any bearing on whether they're a nuisance or a danger.
Right, that would be an additional citation if and when something else happens.
So we could give them a second chance, basically, and see what happens.
That's what you would be doing.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that again? I was just reading the viciousness.
Yeah, 4-3-17, if it helps council.
So what he's saying
provides
is
the
if
guidelines.
your findings are that based on the evidence in front of you, that these dogs don't meet the definition of viciousness, and you grant the appeal, it doesn't mean there's not going to be another citation at some point that might be a dangerous or nuisance citation.
Okay.
Or it could come back vicious. We don't know.
Or yes,
Yeah,
correct.
and at that point, then the dog would be impounded?
No, because, well, it's possible.
It's possible.
Okay.
Yeah,
What,
okay.
what are the, see, right now, under the, sorry, could I, is that all right?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, because I didn't think I was heard, did council hear me say, if you look under 4-3-17, that's kind of like your standards of approval, if you will. That's the thing that, there's 6 items there under A, and then there's a B. I would recommend, or I do recommend, perhaps reviewing those to make sure, as you're deliberating, we're deliberating consistent with the law.
I guess while people are reading, can I comment?
If you want the standards right there.
Yeah. I guess what I wanted, it says, if the appeal is approved, if the appeal is approved, 1, should a similar incident occur with the same canines as described within a 12-month period, the canines will be labeled as vicious, and as such, shall be required to adhere to the standards listed in 4-3-18 of Hayden City Code. Furthermore, such occurrence shall be considered a violation pursuant to 4-3-4, punishable as a uniform citation pursuant to 4-3-29. So that are the consequences if we do approve the appeal.
Correct.
Correct.
Like, what the question to me was, will it require the dog to be impounded? And it's like, well, we don't know. But you just read what are the consequences? If there is another incident, the dog shall be deemed,
Shall.
yeah,
There's
declared
no,
vicious.
With no hearing before,
Well, yeah, but you would be relying on the fact that all of this record is going to appear for some animal control officer that's in the field in the moment.
yeah.
My tendency is to give them a second chance. It's a heartfelt case. And I understand the dogs are a nuisance. So it's really, torn apart on this. But if the appellate knows that they got one more chance and that's it, I'm kind of thinking that's the way I would like to go.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that too.
Sounds like council's ready to make a motion.
Okay, or
Whoever.
Mr. Mayor?
Matt, you go ahead.
Okay, well,
Okay.
my motion is that we would approve the appeal of the vicious dog declaration.
Okay, is that good enough, council?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion with this? Then maybe get a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilmember DePreez?
Yes.
And Council President Roder?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna move on to item 4B. Our next agenda item is to consider approving the Chompers Cafe lease renewal. Our city and the Chompers owners have agreed upon a rate that increased that balances maintaining a popular Hayden restaurant and ensures that Hayden doesn't subsidize private business. The Chompers building and adjacent land are owned by the city, and Chompers has been a leasee of the building for many years. So with that in mind, I'm not sure if we have a staff member that's here that can answer questions. I will do my best. I've got pretty good knowledge of this case. If there are any questions above and beyond what's in the staff memo to you. Go ahead, Ed.
It looks like, if I'm reading this correctly, that it's kind of a graduated $500 per year through the 5-year term. Am I reading that correctly?
I know the legacy one was supposed to be, and I believe the new one is set up that way, yes.
And that it is, because they have been such a long-term good, are they tenants?
They're tenants.
That they're still a bit below the market rate. Am I also seeing that
A
correctly?
little, they're slightly below the market
Right.
rate.
But then again, I don't think we're actually subsidizing what they're paying for it to some degree. So I just want to make sure I was reading that correctly, but it is a graduated scale.
Yes. Matt or Tom, any questions, comments?
Let me think about, I was listening to Ed and so my thought kind of got lost. It'll come back, so give me a moment.
Okay.
I know that ICRIMP insures our buildings liability-wise. And my question is, do we have any idea how much, probably don't, but I need to ask the question, what impact is that building that we own and we have, and I know that they have a liability insurance of their own. My question is are we paying any more to ICRIMP because of the Chomper building and property? Or do they indemnify the city completely with their insurance, and then ICRIMP recognizes that, and they're not charging any insurance for that?
So I would say I can't answer what's the cost. What I can say is an indemnification provision in the lease will not prevent you from also carrying insurance. It would be a cost allocation if.
So what my concern is if it is a additional cost, how much is it? And ICRIM's fees are going up and up and up, is that we have enough money, for the lease to ensure that we get that covered. Now that's, and it may not be very much, but if it's not much, then it's not a big deal, but I don't know how much. And I don't know that we can get that answer tonight.
I can't click.
Cannot?
I cannot.
Okay, no, we
Yeah.
can't get that tonight.
So let me think of my second thought then.
If I had more experience with the contract, I could probably,
You understand my
explain.
concern,
I
it's what
do.
it's costing us. And
And I would say that the Parks building is over that way too. So in my mind and my previous experience would say that there is a cost associated with it and it may not change as much if even it was gone because they already have their own insurance and so do we. And we would still have to insure that building in that space.
Okay, can
So
we-
I agree with you. I'm not
So
sure
can
what
we
the
do this,
difference-
just to make sure ICRIMP knows that if they know we own that building, is that they know that there's insurance coverage by the tenant.
Sure.
That may give us an offset somehow.
Absolutely.
That would be my one thought.
Okay.
My other thought is, and I know I had this explained to me by Lisa before she left about the lease, is that in the market range for that retail property, and that was considered a retail property, the lease rate for this building is just below the bottom of that. And the justification for this lower lease rate is that they've been a really good long-term tenant, and there's value in having somebody that is there, you know they're gonna pay their bills, and they're not a pain in the keister. So I don't mind that we're at the lower end. I mean, we're tasked with making sure we get the maximum amount of money with assets that we do have to handle in the marketplace for our taxpayers. But in this regard, I think that we're being prudent by giving a little less rate because we got a really good tenant. That's my point. I just want to make that point.
Okay. Would anyone in council like to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion that council approve authorizing you to sign a 5-year lease with Choppers Cafe at Stoddard Park.
Very good. Do we have a second? Second. Is there any other discussion? Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Council President Roder?
Yes.
Councilmember DeFreeze? And Councilmember Schaefer?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to move on to reports. I am proud, as I'm sure Captain Smart is, also to provide council with what we believe is a smooth copy of our new monthly activity report as it relates to our law enforcement contract. I'm kind of sad we're missing a council member tonight because this was a lot of work between staff and Captain Smart's team. I know they're still working on previous months, tightening up the data. Captain Smart, would you like to add anything to this report or to other law enforcement related items?
No, I would just, again, reiterate what you already kind of said on there. We are going to go back and re-encapsulate May and June as well so that we can start giving a picture of what that trend looks like from when we first started this project and a move towards this type of a stat sheet. Give you some other info about what we've been doing this month. We've tasked our Hayden deputies to try to really get out there in the community more often. They are stopping by local businesses and making some more connections. Just reintroducing themselves, as well as they're obtaining some information sheets that we're able to put in our computer system as far as who's responsible for alarm calls, or if something was damaged in the middle of the night, who's going to come out, and those types of things. So we're just trying to reaffirm that we have proper contacts for each of the businesses who have the abilities to help us. So they've been doing that. We've had several community events that we've been attending recently. We had a couple attend the Kelly Hughes concert here in the park, ensuring that there's some security there, as well as making sure that the citizens know that we're around and available. Overall, a couple of, for July, a couple of calls for service we did have, and Lisa was actually on a ride along the other night when one of these transpired. I don't know if she's had a chance to share with anybody, but she was able to observe kind of one of our drug units conduct a traffic stop in the Hayden Walmart, which then turned into another traffic stop over in the Walgreens parking lot for the second subject, who this stemmed from a drug buy, a handoff, if you will. And so she was able to witness how all of the assets came together for that, and the multiple units that had to respond because we had two separate things going on for what stemmed from one initial incident. We did have several construction equipment and stuff damaged this month that we're, obviously they're still looking into it. Unfortunately, there was no camera systems. There was not a lot of evidence, but we did have a couple of windows on some backhoes that were broken, and they were in an area that was closely related. So obviously it probably appears that there was a juvenile at some point. We have been trying to canvass those areas more to ensure that we don't have foot traffic that we can attach to it, or at least deter further problems in those areas. And we did have one thing up north of Hayden. $4,000 worth of lumber was stolen from one of the construction sites as well. And again, there wasn't any cameras or anything to help aid in that investigation at this time, but as in all things, we'll keep our ears to the ground, and anytime we can make attachments, we'll certainly go back and loop around to try to figure if we can link this to something else that somebody does down the road. So those are kind of out there pending. Other than that, still have, working down at Honeysuckle Beach. Again, it's just kind of one of those things, as we've all seen over the past couple of years, traffic and congestion down there. Haven't had any major incidents pop up from down there as far as any, scuffles or disturbances, but it's still a parking issue most weekends down there for that group. Other than that, I would entertain any questions you might have from the July stats that are here, or any clarification about some of the columns or things that you're seeing right up front.
Is the response time in minutes?
That's what it's.
Yes.
I hope so.
Well, it's pretty darn quick, that's what I'm
Yeah, so
asking.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
I
say,
mean,
from a
if it
call
was
to-
hours, it'd be like,
May depend, that might be days.
So that is basically, let's say something happens at Walmart, somebody calls the dispatch and says whatever, that, in July, within 1 minute and 42 seconds, there was a unit at Walmart?
Well, I can't always guarantee that. This is average
Average,
response
yeah.
time. So unfortunately, it does take into account calls for service that we handle by phone. A general question pops up on the screen for somebody who wants to know about what's the legal time to shoot off fireworks? Well, that deputy immediately assigns himself and says, I'm arrived on scene, and I'm calling the person by phone. That's going to
Even though
skew
he's
that
not
a little bit.
actually at the location.
Correct, he's not at the house, but that's how we handle many of those calls for service by
Right.
phone. So that does skew it some. Obviously, I can't tell on some of these. Yes, there are times when the deputy's probably right around the corner from Walmart, and it takes 30 seconds because he was driving up the road to go to Jimmy John's. And he decides, hey, maybe I'll go to that call instead. There isn't a way for us to separate that out to say, what is your response times for phone calls and what's your response time for driving calls? The system does not separate those, so it's just average response time is what it is in that regard. Now, obviously, if these things started creeping up further, then you would have probably even more concerns about even our drive times are becoming longer. So if we're down in these ranges, and we can consistently show that month to month, I think that we're gonna be A-okay.
Can you say, I mean, theft is, can that, all kinds of theft, whether it be shoplifting or theft out of a vehicle parked in the parking lot, is,
Correct, it's all encompassing.
anything that gets pinched?
Yeah, it's, stolen lawnmower from the front yard, a bicycle, a motorcycle. The only times we start differentiating is we got truly vehicle theft. We truly try to pull out some of the higher dollar value things and say, well, that's pretty significant. The other ones are just all lumped into theft, general shoplifters as well, from, the local stores.
A surprising number on aggravated assaults. That's basically fighting a physical attack. Is that what aggravated assault is basically?
Well, the term for that would technically be some sort of, most likely we would see some sort of a weapon and or significant threat of significant bodily harm. So it's not going to be just two guys deciding to duke it out a little bit. We're going to be having something that's greater than that, whether somebody's brandishing a knife, firearm, knuckles,
Life-threatening.
bat, baseball bat, something like that. Now again, that was 1 for the month and we've had 9 for the year. So right now we're tracking about 1 a month.
Any other questions for Captain
Yes.
Smart? Go ahead, Tom.
What does CFS stand for?
Those are calls for service.
Calls for service, okay.
Very good.
And in the pie chart, what are the 4 acronyms in the legend stand for?
They match the little code tables below it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Got it.
Yeah, so if you could relate them, alcohol, drugs, general misdemeanors, which are kind of just, again, that we can't, if, we can get very granular and we can come in and, give you something that's got everything, but it's got some general misdemeanors, which are just kind of these, probably some general, regular trespassing, simple batteries, alcohol violations of teens, underage drinking, kind of just jump that all together in one little group of here's some other general misdemeanors, but we're trying to target and show you truly here's some significant crimes that might be affecting your community.
Only 4 DUIs.
I have a question, if I may.
No, also, let me just
go
answer. So, Mr. DePriest, you said 4 DUIs. Now, again, those are arrests. So those are actually people who've taken to jail. DUIs, actually, if we look at, and we can do some more adjustments if you want to see something different on that. There are some DUIs that we have to cite and release because we don't witness them ourselves off of crash scenes and stuff like that. So if we're talking about true charges of DUIs, they might be greater. These are ones that actually went to jail.
So a road stop is made, suspicion of intoxicated drive, DUI, whatever it is, and they run them through the tests. Is it, I would hope, I guess, and assume that the policy is if they fail the test, they go to jail.
If it's based on something the deputy saw them driving, yes.
Right.
But again, if it's a crash we come upon, or a citizen calls us to a scene, or a citizen even says, hey, I think there's a DUI driver that pulled in the gas station. And we get there and we make a contact with them and say, hey, where are you coming from? How you doing tonight? I just drove down that road and I pulled in right over here. Oh, you were on that roadway? Yeah, right out there driving here? Yeah. I think you're under the influence. We would have to charge a cite for that and not arrest for that, because we didn't actually see it, but we have enough to prove that they did commit it.
So even if they say they pulled them over in the gas station, and he says, yeah, I was just driving there, can they legally test them, make them blow or do whatever, and if they are intoxicated, the fact that they're in public.
This is a more complicated analysis.
Well, I know, but I know, but I'm just, so that could just be a citation, even if the guy failed the test.
Yes,
Yes.
we have that
Have to let him
prerogative.
go on his way, and this is just for discussion.
Right, no, our Idaho Supreme Court dramatically affected law enforcement's ability to actually arrest and take somebody to jail, specifically on a DUI, when the Clark decision came out, and the court said, if it's not a misdemeanor committed in your presence, you have to cite and arrest.
So you could.
It affected domestic violence, DUIs, I mean, specifically those two categories.
So you can test and the guy blows over, you cite him, say, okay, get in your car and drive, and then pull him over and say, but I know what we're saying here,
Yeah.
but it's just scary that it is like that if somebody fails it, you have to basically let them go on their way, and I guess if they're foolish enough to get in their car and drive like that, then you're gonna get popped. I would hope the cop would just sit there, the deputy would just sit there and go, okay, if you drive, pal, you know?
Well, we do a lot of things to try to mitigate it, get other family members there for pickups, rides, Ubers, taxis, you know, those
Right.
types of things, and separate that from the equation.
Right.
Looking for opinion. I drive Maple a lot, because of where I live. And we see moms walking with babies in strollers, we see bikes going up and down, and there's an adult facility where some of those folks are actually walk down the middle of the road. My question is, and there are people that park on Maple, which it's too narrow. I've been concerned about the safety, and I think Maple's just an accident waiting to happen because of the increased traffic and for the other reasons I just mentioned. What do you think, and this is just opinion, and I'm just exploring the thought, of making Maple one-way like Strayhorn? That could give us a walking lane, because kids take Maple to school, to Hayden Meadows, both ways, north and south. Is that, in your opinion, a viable possibility? And I'm just looking for a possibility.
Well, I think anything's possible. You know, Post Falls investigated for a long time trying to make, is it Mullen, just up from Celtice, a one-way and do kind of a wraparound. Coeur d'Alene's got multiple downtown streets that are one-ways for Lakeside, Coeur d'Alene Avenue, for even for little stretches and segments. Again, I think I'd have to refer to the street departments to talk about how wide, what are we talking about width-wise, how much room is there with two cars passing? And if they are still allowing street parking, yes, that significantly should weigh into, is this something we should reinvestigate about whether, again, where are you gonna defer that traffic to if you go one way? You know, where's gonna be the other way that those people can access those on and off points? Citizens in that area, you'd have to, I mean, if it's me, it doesn't bother me any, I don't have to go up that road to get to my house, but I imagine start affecting some of those, they might have a little.
Okay, let me center that question even more. would it be safer for the citizens, for traffic or walkers or bikers, if that was a one-way street and had a wide lane?
Well, obviously, anytime you go to one-way, you've gained that much more roadway. I don't know how much traffic is truly doing passing, two vehicles passing at the same time. If that is a heavily traveled road and somebody did surveys up there to see how much traffic is on it, I think you'd have a case to say, maybe it's time to do that. But, again, obviously you're talking 4 months out of the year, probably a lot different than the other 7 to 8 months where it's winter, cold, not many people are gonna be walking on the roadway.
Well, see, I was asked by a former mayor to go watch the traffic that came into Hayden Meadows Elementary during the winter. And when you got snow berms on Maple on both sides, the kids are actually walking in the roadway. And so that's a safety issue. And I know it's a question for our traffic folks to kind of look at, that issue. But I know even Donna kind of smiles a little bit about maybe that possibility. But I would like to maybe explore that down the road, pun intended.
Oh.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for the captain? Captain Smart, thank you for coming. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna move on to 5B. Our city administrator is on PTO this week. So for the calendar review, I'll remind our citizens that our summer concert series is going on for 2 more weeks. And on the 29th, we've got a Movie in the Park event. Move on to 5C, Mayor Road Table.
Mayor,
Yes.
really quick, I was looking at the calendars and the council packets.
Yes.
Planning and zoning commissions for the month of August have been canceled because of lack of public hearings coming before them. And I note that in September, it shows a planning and zoning commission meeting on September 2nd. Last time I checked, that was Labor Day. So we won't be having a meeting that
Okay.
night either.
So no P and Z until mid-September.
Mid-September, correct.
Fair enough.
Nice.
Okay. Does any council member have anything for 5C? Any roundtable discussion, non-action items? Matt?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Mayor. I noticed that the Hayden Meadows Estate, that's the development south of Hayden Meadows Elementary, that I voted no to approve that subdivision purely from a safety point of view. I was concerned about how much more traffic and foot traffic there would be on Fanouken and on Maple. Maple doesn't have any sidewalks. And my understanding, if I remember, and my memory sometimes isn't always that good, but I remember that one of the standards of approval is that the developer was going to put a gate in on the south end or the north end of their property and the south end of because the school is right adjacent to it. And the gate was specifically to allow students to go from the subdivision to school and back, so they wouldn't have to go around and go on the streets. Now, there is an easement that is provided, and I'm assuming it's for that gate, but there's no gate, and school's gonna start in about 3 weeks. So my question is, if that was one of the standards of approval, how come it's not done? And that development's probably 3/4 is built out. So I would like us to look at that and find out, in fact, was it a standard of approval to have a gate there? And I remember that it was, then why hasn't it been built yet? Because the other question I had is who's gonna maintain that gate? In other words, who's gonna open and close it for the schools, for the children? And who's going to plow the right-of-way that will lead up to, maybe the homeowners association will do that, but right now there's no gate. So that's one item. The second item is the Stone Creek North, which now has morphed into Trail Creek? Is that the name?
Trail Ridge.
Trail Ridge, there we go. And I remember one of the conditions of approval was that there has to be 2 separate ingress and egress roads based on our fire marshal's evaluation of the development. And there are 2 houses that are being built. One is maybe 90% complete in Stone Creek North. and there's only one ingress and egress. The one to the north that's supposed to go through Marks, that's not open. So my question is, how could they start building homes when the standard of approval was that they have two, and one of them's supposed to be the north ingress and egress? So that's a second question, is when will that be open, and can they be building homes there when that condition of approval was not met?
So we want to answer those on email and then.
Yeah, right now, I'm just bringing up my observation
Okay.
that I think that's part of our job, is to kind of know what's going on, and I kind of look around a little bit.
All right, we'll update council with those two items.
Okay, I got one more.
Yep,
All right, thank you.
oh, that's good.
All right, I've been thinking about our Public Safety Commission. There's about 100 years of law enforcement experience when you look at Scott, who was the chief of police in Post Falls, and Raleigh, who was 40 years as a constable in Texas. And then who else do we have? And Doug was writing contracts for different cities for law enforcement. So that's a century, over a century of experience. And we have a retired judge, I think, also served as a policeman at one time. And as a council, I asked the question of how many of us have law enforcement experience, and I think Ed was the only one that had a ride along. So really, we don't even have a year of experience. So where I'm going with this is that I would really value our Public Safety Commission to take a look at our proposed contract with the Sheriff's Office for their input. I think that it would be, whenever you have that much experience, I think we would be missing something if we didn't ask them to take a look, at least tell us what they think about the contract. Because I think the more eyes that we have, the better we can serve our citizens with the money that we have to spend on that contract. And I'm not saying it's a bad contract. I'm just saying, let another set of eyes take a look at it and give us some input. So I guess where I'm going with this is I'd like to make that an action item at our next meeting, that we do approve the Public Safety Commission to take a look at the contract and give us some feedback.
So I need the rest of council to weigh in on that.
I agree.
Okay, so just I'm not arguing against that. I guess I want to ask council the value of it. I tend to think more of the results we're getting. I think we're making outstanding progress with the effectiveness and the reporting of our law enforcement contract. Contracts are important, but I think they're most important as a layman when standards aren't being met. There's a straw man that Scott, who heads our Public Safety Commission, and Lisa and Captain Smart are working on right now that is rather comprehensive and will be shared with council in the future, that shows all of the, not just the direction we're trying to take our contract, but, or not the contract, the services, but the metrics that we're using to ensure that we're having an effective program. So my point of saying all that is, if the Public Safety Commission reviews a contract, I'm just asking what value that's really providing council if we're doing all this other stuff.
So, but all you have before you right now is to make that conversation an action item.
Right.
So you can't have a deliberation on this right now because it's not noticed up.
Okay. All right, so.
I'd like to make it an action item,
Okay.
and that's where, it's not a motion, it's just
Yeah,
a direction.
okay.
Thank you.
And you guys all still agree then?
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Okay, so we'll add that to the next agenda. Thank you, Matt. Ed, or, go ahead, Ed.
I only have one,
Yeah.
I think, and that's whatever. I keep hearing, and granted, it's from the same people who have an issue with it, but regarding Capone's parking lot and the fact that it was funded to some degree by HERA, and that it was supposed to be public parking as part of and there is no indication of the fact that it is public parking. So there's a perception that by most people who think it's just for use by Capone's, that, that we look at the possibility of, I don't know, putting up a public parking sign, or maybe, painting public parking on 5 of the spaces along the front, Hayden there, or something to meet or satisfy whatever the proper vernacular, how's that for a word? To indicate that it is available to the public, because there are members of the community who have that as an interest that they want to see addressed.
Rob, I know this has come up before. Do we have anything underway right now where we're looking at signage for that parking lot?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Can we take that for action?
So I was making some notes, go back to see what the agreement is, to see if there is a public easement noted or recorded someplace. And I can talk to Melissa Cleveland with her and see if she has any documentation that she can share.
Okay.
So Rob, correct me, but I'm trying to remember, I know that the Hayden Urban Renewal Agency bought the property that Capone's is on. There was an old gas station, and it was all remediated, and it was cleaned up, it was sold, then it was sold to Capone's, but then there was a parking area that, did HURA maintain ownership of that parking area? Somebody's leasing it to somebody, and I don't remember.
So my first step was I'd go to the Kootenai County web map and click on that area to see who the ownership is. I don't think that HURA owns it. So I think it's owned by Capone's. The conversation of the public parking does ring a bell. It was before my time.
Right.
But I would have to go back and see if somebody followed through on that.
What I keep hearing about it is, and we all know that a lot of times the information that the public receives is, who knows, but that HURA funded things like the swale, or whatever, the widening or something regarding the development of primarily the area, probably the curb space and into the swale or whatever that is, and that as such, it is perceived to have been, if not actually, for public use. I don't know exactly what it is, but there is this perception out there that HURA helped fund and helped Capone's get that built, shall we say, and that as part of the deal was that it was to be available to public parking. That could be wrong. I don't know. This is just what I keep getting in my ear.
I can do some digging.
Thank you.
I'm looking at a map right now, and that parcel is split up between T&T Enterprises and then Thomas and Teresa Capone Living Trust. But it does show that there's parking spaces on the north end of it that are in the right-of-way. About half of the parking spaces in the right-of-way. So it doesn't say anything about Hayden Urban Renewal Agency owning any of that property.
I'm on the HURA website, just for clarity. It says additionally, a portion of the site remains available for parking access by the public, all in an effort to assist with the overall downtown parking strategy, which facilitates business redevelopment within the Hayden Central Business District. And I believe that is the truth. Okay. Anything else, Ed or Tom? Roundtable. I have one item, if council would entertain me, please. And this is something you can ruminate on if you want, or provide feedback. I'm asking for council's help. This week, some of council asked questions about item on the agenda, which I expect that's reasonable. And for the public's sake, I asked council to start hitting me up with agenda issues in lieu of going to Lisa. But some of the questions being asked seem to deviate from what the council was being asked to consider
The memo we provide includes a summary, recommended action, and we try to include enough detail for council to understand the issue. How can we help council understand what is being asked to consider? And the reason I'm asking for this help is because I got some significant pushback this week trying to explain why some of the questions being asked were not relevant to the agenda item. I obviously don't want pushback with council. I want us to have a healthy communications and a healthy relationship. But if I tell council, hey, these 8 questions you sent me on this agenda item don't apply to the decision, I need to break the cycle of, well, you have to give me that anyway, because that's not right.
Are you talking about specifically with you, or, because I remember, it seems to me, you sent an email about council going to staff also.
Right,
Ask
right.
staff
I'm
questions.
asking council to go to me, and if I can't answer, then staff will, I'll ask staff to give you a call to answer questions. But the issue that is more of, if you ask a question on an agenda item, and I say, well, that question doesn't really apply to that agenda item directly, and then you say, well, yes, it does, doggone it, and I'm a council member, and you have to answer my question, that's not what I want, and that's not what you want.
understandable,
That's
yeah.
not what you want either, I know that, but that is happening.
I just speaking for myself, and I infrequently, I think, question too much of this stuff is I hope that we would have the ability, and it's often to say, and I'm just going to use, hey, Donna, you know, this thing here, can you clarify it for me? You know, and she's always very good about, yeah, come on in, you know, sit down, whatever.
Right.
It's, I don't think it's usually legal or question, it's, hey, what's the deal on this, whatever the issue is?
Right.
Can you point out what's what? But, I mean, it sounds reasonable what you're asking, yeah. If it's not pertinent to the agenda item itself, then I think that you're correct in what you're asking.
Okay. Tom, any thoughts?
Sometimes I don't know whether the questions I ask are relevant or not. So I have to ask the question in order to find out.
Is there a way though that I could communicate to you, this is not a good question without you then throwing up hackles and saying, well, doggone it, I still want to know anyway?
I don't know if you're applying that behavior to me or not, but,
I'm asking it in the broadest sense.
It's really hard to answer your question other than to say, sometimes I don't know what to ask until I've asked the question.
understand.
Okay?
And I will do my best for the record to answer your questions, but, man, if they're out there in right field and I push back, I guess I just want to ask council to take my word that that's not the case. I'm also planning on, from now on, to be at City Hall an hour before city council meetings in case there's any ninth inning questions or concerns that that are still unresolved, because what we don't want is to, well, I'd like to at least have everything clear in everyone's head before we start the meeting. So I guess I'm letting everybody know.
I just want to say, though, that in preparing for city council meetings, at least from my experience, it's kind of a process of triage. I get a bunch of information, sometimes late on a Thursday or Friday, and I'm like, holy cow, what do I do? And kind of cleaning out the consent calendar is the first thing I do. So when it's fresh in my memory, I'm writing down questions and I'm firing them off.
I didn't notice.
So, first of all, waiting until Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock doesn't work for me.
Well,
okay?
again, that's for any last minute. It's
Yeah,
not
and
meant to be the
secondly,
primary.
sometimes that dialogue back and forth helps me better understand the context of what's going on. So, I'm not saying you're telling me to shut up,
No, of
but
course
it sort of feels like, if I say that doesn't apply, then just take my word for it, and that doesn't work for me, I'm just telling you.
Well, that's where I'm going to ask council for down the road for any ideas that would, because, right, I understand your position. You don't want anybody to just say, don't worry about that. It's your job to worry about that. But also don't want to hit where
we're in a maelstrom of.
Well, you're perceiving it as a maelstrom because I'm one of four, okay? From my knothole, I'm just asking questions.
Right,
okay?
but not all of your peers are as patient and articulate.
I would, and my experience has been that if it came to the thing where you, when you don't know, and we've all been there before, we're relatively new, and as we moved along, we've learned, so we don't have to ask those questions that we didn't know until we knew.
Right.
But if, when someone asks a question, you say, well, that's not really relevant to this, and you explain, okay, either why or what, but I mean, I know that just in my experience when I was, and I'm always learning, but really, shall we say, it helped to have the broad issue or topic explained. Not, say, okay, as it applies to the agenda of this particular item, your question doesn't, but if it's about, I don't know, I'm gonna keep going back to land use or whatever it is, or stuff like that, and you might wanna enter into a broad discussion, not specifically related, so that it educates the lack of knowledge of the broad issue, so that down the road, there's that understanding, so that when you do say, well, that's not particularly specific.
All right, I appreciate that feedback. So what I'm hearing you guys say is maybe include a little why something doesn't apply, and then give an example that may not be specific to that issue, but would then set you up for success the next time you see something similar.
Right.
All right, I appreciate
Could I
that.
put my 2 cents in?
Yes, sir, I'm asking you to, please.
I've been here long enough, I've asked a bunch of stupid questions. You do, because you either miss the mark or you don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's thrown at us in a short period. I know what I try to do is I try to sieve through the agenda items at home. I do it the day of, so it's as fresh as possible, and I try to answer if I can, my own questions, and, because I don't want to burden staff with, I hope I'm not calling you very often, am I?
Well, that is part of me.
But I've been here longer than anybody else, so all what I'm saying is
So
that
you're
learning.
saying we should go to you, right?
No.
No, you can't do
I
that.
know.
No. But it's a learning process, and so you got to ask the questions. And so, Mayor, that's a tough one because, that's a teaching thing, and for council members to be more efficient, we have to go through those processes and, like me, ask the stupid questions.
And I don't mind the questions, it's more of when I provide the answer and what I'm
It's not
sounding like is.
accepted.
Yeah, you guys accepting it, so maybe I'll work on being more articulate as to why a question, but, when you got 8 questions thrown at you, sometimes it's hard to.
So here's maybe a directive in how to handle that too. The question is, should we be asking, because it used to be, we'd ask Brett the question. And then Brett would filter out to whomever and get back to us, or say, call Donna or whoever.
And that's what I want to do, I want to be that hub.
You want to
for
be the
Yes,
hub for the
yes.
conduit? Okay,
That's
well,
what
so
I'm-
you would rather take those questions and not Lisa?
Correct, that's what I'm trying to, that's what I'm
This is
establishing.
one of his resources to filter you to, if that's where it needs to go.
Right, but I'm
Okay.
going to do my best to answer the questions.
Okay.
Just directly. And that's to help take the load off staff. That's the why behind it.
So have council members been meeting with you at least once a month just to chat?
Most of you meet with me once a month to chat.
And that's good. I think it's important that to build a, bonding and ideas. I mean, we're supposed to create a vision for our city, and that comes from the helm, but it also comes from the right rudder and the left rudder and in between here. And I think that's, you play an important role in helping direct where we go with the vision. And I think that's critical, that we do have coffee or whatever once in a while with the mayor. And I would encourage everybody, if they're not doing it, they should be doing it.
Well, like I said, I meet with most of you regularly, and it helps our professional relationship so that we don't have surprises at these meetings. Ed?
Speaking of visions, and it just popped a vision.
Yeah.
I believe we have approved, where are we with, in relation to the consultant on the comprehensive
I'm
plan?
glad you brought that up.
You must have been
So I'm trying
mentally.
to find a date in September that we can have a workshop, and I don't know if you want to have a workshop with the consultant prior to a city council meeting, or if you'd just like to have that, only focus of your workshop on a different day. of the week.
Workshop.
Yeah, let's split those.
Okay, so,
You don't get into a time constraint, you say, okay, we're gonna have it, and then we run out of time.
and that doesn't always work.
Does that work for you too, Matt? Split them off?
Yeah.
Okay.
And are you, do you want to have it at a normal council meeting time, or would you like to have it an earlier in the afternoon kind of conversation? As we're looking for dates and times that might work.
Well, what do you, I mean, not knowing what the depth of the conversation may be, but potentially it can get deep and long. So, I mean,
Can we see an agenda first?
3 o'clock, yeah.
That way we can, maybe an agenda with what are the talking points and maybe the
Council,
historically
according
norm
to the
times.
scope, the council wanted to have a time to meet with the consultant
Right.
prior to them going through the analysis to better hone in on all of the concepts, visions, goals, and policies. So that is.
So more like an
pretty much
introduction meeting?
the- Pardon me?
If it's more of an introduction meeting, is council good with, say, 90 minutes for planning purposes?
It might be longer than that.
That's what I'm-
Just to introduce?
It's not an introduction kind of meeting, it's more of, because you had council members who said that the information that was provided was not what they wanted to see for their final, to go through and evaluate as part of this. So
That is true, but
if you're going to add more than what you got, you're going to be.
Right, but we also have to balance the fact that the product that's being delivered to the consultant was done through with the majority of council. So for a single council member to say, I didn't get my way, therefore we need to do this, this, and this, doesn't that
I
disrespect
don't think it
the,
was just one council member.
right, but doesn't that disrespect the decision that was made by this body?
Correct. I'm not,
And I don't
not
mean-
suggesting.
What's that?
I'm not suggesting anything, I'm just saying that, and they have all of that information already, that's already been given to the consultant.
Right, so again, I get back to, does this really need to be that long of a meeting?
Can I suggest that the 3 o'clock start time seems to have worked well, and that gives us, hopefully we'd be under 2 hours.
Right.
Hopefully, type of thing. But if it does go past 4:30, I think nobody wants to be here for 4 hours going like this. Everybody, I think, hopes to get everything, all the information they need in an efficient time manner.
So is there any day of the week that doesn't work for council as a whole that I should steer clear of if I send out a
I don't think anybody wants a
meeting?
Friday
where-
at 3 o'clock
No, I
meeting.
don't think so either.
Not till like.
Wednesdays work best for, Wednesdays or Thursday afternoons work best for
Staff.
most of staff and calendars. I can say that.
I don't have any
I'm already
problem.
here Thursday afternoon.
Either way.
If Harbs is a meeting on Thursday at 3
let's
would be
do
the
that.
only
Grab that
thing
one.
that I couldn't make.
And then I'll share that I'm gonna be on vacation at the end of September, so if you're looking at September, should do it in the first 3 weeks.
Okay. Probably not the first week because that's Labor Day, so probably
Probably
the
not.
second or third week. Okay, that's what we can do.
Has council got anything else tonight? I will close by thanking council for a nice roundtable discussion. We had a number of topics, and staff, as always, thank you for being here and supporting this meeting. Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We need a second on this one?
No.
Probably not. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Michael.